By a show of hands, we're going to do a little audience participation. We're going to get the panel familiar with who all is in the room. So let's say over the last 12 to 24 months, who has visited either on their own will or out of necessity to a discount tire? Don't be shy, raise of hands. I'm going to give it, what do you say, 10% out there, 15%?
Probably.
Okay, very good. If we go to the next brand, Sprouts, who has visited a Sprouts, I would say, in the last 3 to 6 months? Okay, Steve, what are you going to give that?
Thank you.
30, 40%?
30, 40%.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the alcohol is going to take it with the wine down. Pretty sure. I'm just saying.
You might have already beat me to the punch. So, over the last 24 to 48 hours, because I saw shopping bags in the lobby, who has been to a Total Wine and More? Okay, give yourself a couple months.
We appreciate that.
Okay, so you do take it, Wayne. Congratulations.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
So you guys saw the title for today's discussion, Building for the Future of Retail. And I thought we could unpack this conversation kind of in 3 parts to kick off the day. So first, really starting with the current state of the retail industry and development from these 3 brands' perspectives. Certainly there's administration challenges being brought into play, tariffs, and then the traditional kind of AEC challenges that we see with permitting, inspections, supply chain, logistics, labor, all of those things. So we're going to get this retail group's perspective on that. And then next shifting into really how are these brands innovating and accelerating growth, both within their new store formats as well as within the existing portfolio. And folks are always looking to the future. So as we kind of land the plane on the third topic, is really understanding their perspective on how they might be using AI and tech either now or over the next couple of years, because that's rapidly advancing. Looking at both their internal workforce and who the leaders of the future are, as well as their strategic partnerships. And that's a lot of us here in the room. And then lastly, I'm going to push them for some bold predictions and maybe get a little uncomfortable. I think April actually already nailed this question. I don't know how she pulled this off, but excited to hear your feedback on that. And then hopefully we have about 5 minutes left for questions, so definitely be writing your questions down. I think the panel would love to hear those. So with that, I'm today's moderator, Blake Brosa with Apex Imaging Services. We provide general contracting, PMO, and tech services for our multi-site retail clients. We actually have the good fortune and pleasure to work with all 3 of these brands, so thank you for that. And from there, I think we'll actually turn it over for quick introductions. So Steve, maybe we start with you. Kind of how did you get to where you are today, and what are you focused on for the organization?
Well, you asked me to be on this panel. That's how I got here. Student of retail, quite frankly, my whole career. Store design, engineering, construction. About 30 years in grocery retail, stint at Amazon, and spent a bit of time at Walgreens as well. So,
April Miller Duncan. I was traditionally a designer and did a lot of corporate design, moved into the world of CBRE, kind of a smaller company. You may not have heard of them, but did project management all over the world, and then became into retail. Did a stint at Whataburger, and then now at Discount Tire doing retail all over the United States. And I am in charge of building our beautiful buildings and building our dreams.
Wayne Schuster, been with Total Wine 3.5 years. Kind of started my career with architecture, building construction, but really learned a lot more about retail starting at Walgreens. Worked at Kroger. Steve and I actually worked together at Walgreens together as well. So. Interesting career. My role, actually, I'm in charge of everything from architecture all the way through repair and maintenance. So it's a unique role. Love what I do, and looking forward to our conversation today.
Fantastic. Well, to get us started, if we take a look at Sprouts, you guys have had a heck of a run, right? You guys were rated #1 retailer last year with Progressive Grocers. Stock price is trading at almost an all-time high of $150 per share. I think that's up, 130% over the last 12 months. how do you keep that momentum going into, 25, 26 and beyond? And what are you guys doing to kind of reinvent and make sure you guys continue down that path?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good run, right, with Sprouts. And but we don't want to rest on our laurels, right? So we've been really, really lucky. And I think a lot of it is the credit with the leadership team all being on the same page, proven format, not veering off the course kind of thing, right? But one of the things that, as any retailer continues to be challenged with, forget about the external, sort of influences that are sort of coming into the business, is this aspect of making sure that we remain fresh, customer relevant, we continue to innovate, right? So, there's a part of us that sort of says, like, let's just keep doing what we're doing and scale and continue to execute flawlessly on behalf of the customer, expand into new markets, and that works really, really well. And then there's people like myself who tend to be a bit of a disruptor within the organization. Say, why don't we try one of this? And what about we do a bit of that? So finding that balance, I think, between that flawless execution, really executing against what you do really, really well, while you continue to look at things to make sure that you don't wake up one day and you're not Sprouts, right? We've seen so many companies out there. There's plenty of examples of that, and really trying to drive that sort of balance between, I'll call it disruptive innovation, that you can sort of drive into the organization, but making sure that you're really hitting on all the cylinders out there.
And if we can push in a little bit further, what are a few of the examples that you're actually driving into the business?
I can't tell you that stuff. It's interesting things, right? So like in the case of Sprouts, right, it's a fairly targeted customer and a limited range of products. I mean, we don't have a big box; it's 23,000 square feet. So if you think about Sprouts as a food innovator, like a Shark Tank kind of thing, we literally have companies, new products that will come in and they will pitch Sprouts, and they will land first time in a Sprouts store. And you either make it or you don't, right? They go into, they drop into what we call our innovation center, which is an area within the store, and it'll be there for 90 days, and you're either out the door or you're on the shelf. And ones that make it on the shelf are very, very happy. People have been, there's been some great small companies that have become quite large, and people have done well. So that's one of the examples of sort of driving that innovation. And there's so much innovation in the food market today that literally getting the stuff in and getting it on the shelf gets to be a challenge. So we've got things like that. But my point is, it's a fairly low frequency trip. So unlike, the Albertsons and the Krogers of the world, like people have big giant shopping baskets, people don't frequent Sprouts, generally speaking, all that often. So coming up with new reasons for someone to come to Sprouts. So it might be an in-store coffee shop with a local coffee brand, right? So you're using that habitual behavior to bring people in and sell them other things, as well as just innovating on offers within the range of things that we have today.
Yeah,
So
love it, love it. So April, if we pass to you, you guys have a pretty consistent offering of, what you guys are doing. How are you innovating in a rather old industry, a rather tired industry, but you guys are making it work within this, unique tire industry?
I think we are still true to our original founder's dream. It's making dreams come true. We are customer centric, very similar to what Steve was saying, and we also are employee centric. We want to make sure that our customer experience, but also our employee experience, are not compromised. And it's a great place to work. A lot of folks basically go to college, do part-time tire tech, change tires, and then they see the growth pattern, and they are able to see what we are doing from, promoting from within. And one day, a 28, 29, 30-year-old is his manager of his own store or her store. And we build those stores, and we call that building the dream. No, so we are the dream builders, right? That's what I call my team, because we get to make someone's dream come true when someone hands over a set of keys and said, Steve, this is your store. That changes people's lives. People can send their kids to college and buy homes and cars, and that is that financial security is what we're giving them, and it's exciting. It's really exciting, and it's emotional, and it's fun, and that's when it stops being fun. That's when you get out, but it's still fun.
Keep it going.
Yeah, and it's
Keep
it's
it
that yin and yang pull.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys lost my train of thought, but it's going to come back 1 second. Um, good growth trajectory. Coming back to traditional AEC challenges, we all have them, but you're talking more recently about the tariffs and some of the bulk buying cost strategies that you're considering. Some of those, can you share with the audience, and how are you kind of navigating that?
Yeah,
today?
as long as you don't tell anybody. Okay.
This
No,
very
I mean it's no secret. So if it is a secret, I'm going to burst it right now. We're not going to change the tariffs. We're not, steel, aluminum. We can't do that. Anything about that is as good as I am at my job. I wish I could. But what are you doing in other places and in other areas that you can mitigate and offset those prices that we know are going to increase? I mean, every CEO, every VP of finance is going to say, "What can you do?" And it's the little things. It's we are trying to bulk buy more, but everyone's doing that. I think bulk buying, making sure, how do we figure out, maybe on the lower end of the scale, how do we figure out how to manage that? Also, creating a negotiating process with our vendors, who are, and we call them partners, are partners, to where it's beneficial for both, right? And how do we do that? It's we like to bundle, right? So if it's an architectural firm or a GC firm, or an environmental firm, will say, "Hey, we've got 5 or 6 coming in North Carolina, or we've got 2 in North Carolina, 3 in South Carolina." We'll create a bundle. We'll time that out, and it's a good thing, because it goes to our culture of taking care of people, because those people who build our buildings and draw our buildings are our customers. You guys are our customers. So, but we also know that it needs to be beneficial for us. So we expect that, that time and service, customer service, for us as well. And it really is beneficial, because, as you all know, low bid is not always low bid. So negotiating really gets out in front of that, creates that relationship that they're going to take care of us, we'll take care of them. All you have to do is give us good customer service and good deliverables, and we'll keep feeding you and your families and your employees.
Love it. We'll pass it to Wayne.
Okay.
Wayne, tell us a little bit about Total Wine Business. How is it performing? And then what are some of the new concepts that you're maybe looking at with flexible format and planning?
Sure. We've been testing a lot with kind of smaller formats, but really when you look at a store, is it truly the size? You have to look at the demographics. You have to look at the customer base. You have to understand that market. And when we go into market, we want to be the best in the market. And sometimes that's challenging with real estate deals. But the biggest thing is, how do you focus on the customer? Really build that customer base, have that product. Localization, I think, is really key for us. We're starting to see a lot of the local products come into our stores and our markets, and that's really what we've been focusing on. We always look at square footage. I think all of us do. But really, what is the brand that you're trying to represent in your company? For us, we have a lot of unique things in our stores. We have our tasting bars, our wine education rooms, all these great things. But how do you get that into a smaller format? How do you really, when you go into a Total Wine store, you want to kind of have that experience of wherever you're traveling or wherever you're going. But how do you put that all together in a smaller store? And that's a big challenge for us. And we're still trying to think through that. But when we're in a first market, we want to be big, And then you also have to look at, from a transactional standpoint, from your customer, are they really coming into your store and shopping? Or are they doing curbside? Are they doing in-store pickup? So we're really focusing on all those parameters and really understanding, how do we design that store and how do we build it?
Yeah. So second generation spaces seem pretty appealing. Speed to market, right? We're able to get in the box.
Yes.
But what are some of the unintended consequences of going into that smaller box? And maybe what are you giving up in kind of future flexibility?
Yeah, from an expansion standpoint, let's our store does very well, and we're like, okay, we can't expand anymore. So we have to think of that future. How does that going to portray as we grow as an organization? But the other caveat is that footprint is so key to your success. You know, you have to look at, like I said, the ISP, all those type of things. We call it in-store pickup, to really understand that customer base, because we're starting to see a trend that not many customers are coming into our stores now. We're starting to see a lot of in-store pickup. We're starting to see more curbside. We're also seeing, you know, how does the digital piece of that impact that footprint? So maybe you do need less registers, maybe you don't, but you have to understand how that market plays. So we look at, you know, sim stores, similar stores, and how does that play into your store design and layout? And those are some big factors that we're looking into as well.
No doubt. And I think Sprouts is averaging what, around a 35,000 foot box?
23,000.
Oh, 20, so
Yeah.
even smaller.
went
So
from
how's
30
this impacting you guys?
30 to 23, and it was really around speed to market. It was so we could take advantage of some of those second use spaces as well. You know, split it, you know, at Bath and Beyond, if you will. But I'm with Wayne. I mean, the footprint and the layout is really key, and we're almost obsessive to a point where we'll reject a site if it's got some angle corner in the back, right? Because it doesn't give the kind of customer experience. And I think you can argue either way, right? Again, it's that speed to market versus getting, you know, perfection. But it's interesting how you talk about your ISP program. So same with us. It's hard to predict. So, you know, you mentioned AI, right? Like that's where I'm hopeful that some of the AI, when you start to put all of this information into this right, this realm of as we go to new locations, how can we start to predict what percentage of the business will be, right, e-commerce, in-store pickup? How do we have to think about brick and mortar a little differently? So I'm really interested to see where that starts to go.
Yeah. April, any comments on flex format or smaller spaces?
Oh yeah, I mean, square footage equals cost. You know, that's development costs, that's rent costs, that's all about how do we, you know, do the same customer experience in less space. You know, that is the ultimate, you know, problem that we're solving for. And I think, you know, we're doing the same thing of, you know, is it more digital? You know, people are buying more tires online. They don't pick them up in the store, but they deliver them to the store and they get them installed. So how do we then go, well, do we need more inventory there? Do we need that big a size of a building? How does that work? And so all those questions, and when you're looking for sites and real estate, and that all comes into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important to juggle, but also to understand that's the business part of our business, is to say, you know, if our assets, our buildings are on a 1 acre, 0.8 acre, or 0.5 acre, you know, that then goes to, from a business standpoint, how do we manipulate that building, but still have the same customer service?
Yeah. So if we stay in the thread of speed to market, and Steve, I think this is something that you mentioned you were passionate about, of both how does organizational capability play into that speed to marketplace, as well as kind of your strategic vendor partnerships?
Yeah, it's well, you know, I would say internal to the business, right? I think that there's a positive tension that can happen with that, right? So again, it's that getting to that speed to market while we, as I talked about earlier, getting to be a bit disruptive. How we bring our strategic partners to the table on that end, both internal, right? So what are our relationships with our internal procurement folks and whatnot? And we talked about tariffs and bulk buys and right, how far do we get out in front of this to ensure that speed to market aspect? And that's been an interesting ride as of late, because, you know, from a board and from a executive leadership perspective, it's like, get us as many stores as you possibly can in a given year.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, great. So, but you still have the normal things of permitting and, right, everything that's sort of gone online with that kind of thing, right? And, you know, the easy answer is, well, just show up online and tell them who we are and have them give you a permit and put a shovel on the ground.
That doesn't work.
Right.
That doesn't work.
Like, yeah, it's like, yeah, that's a different kind of partnership. I mean, it'll work in some aspects, like when you're stuck in the process, you can sort of go back to relationships. But most of the time, as we all know in this room, when you show up, there's nobody at the desk, right? They point to an online portal, or there's a QR code that you got to scan, kind of thing. So thinking about all of those things, so strategic vendor partnerships in terms of supply of goods and services, how we think about permitting and whatnot, and then sort of that internal tension of like, like you mentioned, Sprouts is on a roll. So the answer is like, get as many out of the ground as you possibly can, right? So we're trying to, in our case, we're really trying to be forward thinking, but also not get over our skis, if you will. So we would rather sort of under promise and over deliver is really kind of the aspect of what we've had to do, especially with all of the other pressures that are out there, right? Tariffs is a great example, right? We've gotten hit with tariffs here the last few months, and it's like, well, I'm not just going to write a bigger check. I'm actually going to buy less. Like, well, what does that mean? Like, what is that impact going to be to the industry? What's the impact on consumers, right? Like we don't know what those answers are going to be, but that's been my short-term answer. Like, take whatever my PO is, take the tariff off, because to your point, there's nothing we can do about it. I'm going to buy less, which means I'm going to execute less on behalf of the consumer. So it's an interesting conundrum.
A lot of people here were expecting you to have the answer, just so you know.
I think to Steve's point, you have a budget that you have to abide to. So, I mean, you have a yearly budget, your forecast is X, and, you can only do so much with that.
Right.
April, any final closing thoughts on kind of speed to market?
Well, I think, it also goes to the team that you build, not just your internal team of project managers, designers, things like that, but also your external team. And I don't know if this is the time to bring it up, but we've kind of coined a kind of a phrase that says we want a partnership, not a vendorship. And we want to not just have it be transactional, because if our partners, our GCs, our architects, our design, anybody who is our third-party project managers, anybody who's involved with us, you're on our journey with us. And that we have to build, so many stores per year. You're a part of that goal with us. So whatever you're doing, and we see that you're bringing that to the table, and knowing, like what Steve said about, my PO is going to be less because I can't from a budget standpoint. So it's how are our partners helping us, and because we're all growing. All three of us up here are growing in different ways. And I think there's room on that train for everybody. It's just who's going to show up, be a partner, and put in the time that we're putting in as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, strategic partnerships, not vendorship. Wayne, thoughts?
Yeah, just with relationships in general. I think that's kind of the key word. As we've evolved since I've been with the company, we redesigned our fixtures, new lighting. We went out and sourced a lot of different companies. So in the beginning, everyone's hesitant. How is this relationship going to work out? Is this going to be good? It's not just about buying. It's actually the service piece. That's how you really build that relationship, because we can all look at a PO and say, oh yeah, the costs look good. But are they delivering? If there's damage, are they getting things there on time for us? Are they helping us out to really help us open the store? I think that's the key. You have to have that partnership and that relationship to say, the end goal is to get this store open. And I think that builds that relationship.
I totally agree. And it's not just about, hey, I've delivered my widget, I've delivered my fixture,
right?
I'm done. No, it's what are you doing to say, hey, I know you've got 3 more. These are all teed up, April, and we're ready to go.
Right.
It's take that uncertainty out of my process and make it to where you are a trusted partner.
And owning it.
Right. And owning it.
Yep.
I think the aspect of partnership has always been important, but never more important than now. And I've always been a big fan of quarterly business reviews, and we just did one with Apex, for example. And it's really interesting because you want to turn the table, right? Generally, it's the company that's writing the check holds the partner accountable. I want to turn the table, and I want to have it the other way, right? So we talked about phrases that tend to stick. I like to say, we'll go to our strategic partners and I'll say, tell me where I'm doing stupid. I don't have all of the answers. My team doesn't have all of the answers. Tell me what I can do to be like, where I can save costs, or where I can save time, or where I can just think about different ways to do that, and allow for your partners, your strategic partners, to really hold you accountable as well. And that flywheel really can benefit, especially now in times of uncertainty.
Totally agree.
Love it. Love it. So if we shift gears a little bit, data is obviously king. We spent a little time talking about your net new store growth and strategies, but there's this big existing store fleet that you all are trying to manage. Talk through a little bit about how you're managing those existing facilities. How are you being challenged to have more and more data about those to go about decision making to maintain, the large portfolios that you guys are all scaling?
I could start. I mean,
Yeah.
the great thing about my role, like I said, I'm in charge of repair and maintenance. So you start seeing all these work orders and tickets, and you're like, what's going on? And you start seeing the repetitiveness. You're like, we discovered, we're spending a lot of money on our aisle guides. Our aisle guides were positioned in our aisle, and we're like, well, why are they getting damaged? And we have our big Joes in our store. If you've ever been in our stores, we're going up really high with our product. And what can we do with that? So we actually totally redesigned it and actually brought those aisle guides out into the front of the store, which now as you look down the aisle, you can actually see what aisle you need to go to. And the other great thing is we made it flexible and nimble. And I think that's the key as you're looking at designing and fixtures. You got to think of your future and how can you make these fixtures ebb and flow. So before, our aisle numbers were permanently in. So if we had to have a fixture run, we're like, oh, now we got to change all the aisle guides in the store. So now with this new fixture, we're like, hey, this is working out great for us. And then also we did another step with our existing fixture. We have our lay down bins and our shelves. And we said our fixtures before were like, we have to tear down like the whole fixture to reassemble it just to change from bin to stand up. And we're like, this is ridiculous. So our team really bonded together and we talked to everybody in the organization about this new fixture and we got everyone's buy-in. And now this fixture, we're rolling it out and I can change from bin to stand up. It doesn't take like a screwdriver to put this thing together. So it's a great thing. So from a design aspect and really partnering with everybody in the organization really helps.
Huge win.
A huge win.
Huge win.
Yeah.
April?
I think we're all kind of feeling the same thing. My biggest kind of not issue, but kind of hurdle was we call it our brand refresh. We just refreshed the existing stores, and we have a lot in our portfolio from over 60 years. And it was a little cumbersome to have 200 GCs doing bits and parts. So we really said, who are our best performers? Who's our varsity team? And who also cares about our goals? And we really, skinnied it up a bit and said, these are the teams that are going to bat for us. They are making sure that they work through a Sunday and they stay up on that night because we are closed on Sunday. We get most of our work done on Sunday. How are they treating our customers when the work is going on while they're coming up to the temporary building? That's important. And again, that goes back to that partnership. But also what we were talking about, bulk buying, having the things there and ready when you're ready, because we don't want to store down. It's still open while we're working on it. So how do we get things there quickly? How do we get things there efficiently with that partner? And it's a marriage of all those. But also we have our third-party project managers who are in that region who know that region, right? And so that's also kind of the third leg of the stool that we need our eyes and ears who know, Metro Denver, right? Who know, Charlotte, North Carolina, who understand those idiosyncrasies of those municipalities. And I think that's what's really been our success of doing I think we'd have like 200 something this year for our brand refresh. So very lofty goal, but we're actually at about 40% of that right now.
Fantastic. Steve, how about Sprouts? Maintaining existing assets, keeping track of, what's in the fleet, digital surveys. How are you guys navigating that space?
Yeah, it comes back to that balance that I talked about, right? So I mean, we're heavy into scale mode, right? So if you have $1, right, because capital's not completely unlimited. If you ask the business, what do you want to do? They're like, okay, we'll take another new store with $1.
Mm-hmm.
And but we don't want for the existing fleet to suffer. How I think about the other aspects of that is twofold. One is, as I mentioned earlier, making sure that sales initiatives, for example, that we can roll those things out in the fleet, making sure that our offer is always relevant, is always forefront for the customer, first and foremost. And that has to be scale wise and across the business. So that can be quite lofty there. And then there's to Wayne's point, the repair and maintenance side. And I can tell you that Sprouts is probably at a bit of a turning point now. I mean, the chain's literally, 20, 21, 22 years old. So, and they've gotten away with, for all of those years, being a reactive kind of business, right?
Mhm.
Something breaks, you roll a truck, you write the check, and you move on to the next store. And we've just put in a new leader over our facilities team who is very much a strategic thinker. And her focus is on proactive capital replacement programs, multi-year. So she's laid out a full vision for the next 5 years and has gone to the executive leadership team to garner the capital. So understanding what's in the store, the assets, the fleet, when things are getting to the end of their useful life, because the remit from our CEO is, I don't want stores with busted stuff. Like I want you to get out in front of it, and we're happy to write the check to do that. But you got to be really strategic on that end, and so I'm excited to see where that takes us.
You bet. You bet. All right. So if we shift gears, kind of kicking into the third topic here, looking to the future, let's talk about your guys' personal beliefs right now on kind of AI and technology within each of your businesses. Where do you see that going over the next couple of years, but specifically for you guys, right? Because AI, it's a lot that's out there, but how do you harness it today? How do you leverage it? But how do you think you might be using it 2 years from today? I'll open it to whoever wants to jump first.
I'll jump first, I guess. We, I think, are already utilizing it with our architectural partners and our design partners, really seeing how we can get to the square footage that we were just talking about. How does that look? How do we explain that to our executive committee? How do we understand what that model will produce for us? But then also knowing that there is a whole other digital side to the customer facing experience, and how are they using it, and how does that then affect our building? Because it's all that building to retail to digital in your hand relationship, and how all that connects, and really using that technology to understand what's going to happen in the next year, 2 years, right? We don't, I mean, banking and flights here to this event and hotels, we do that all on our phone. And I think that most of retail is going to start moving to that. We have. And so it's how that relationship of balancing what that technology is doing for us, and then
Yeah.
how do we use it to help us?
Yeah. Can you describe a little bit, how is your executive committee leveraging the technology, or how are you kind of upselling that to them? Are they embracing it today, or any resistance?
I think it's a learning, right? We all teach our customers how to use our products, right? Drive through, you go through McDonald's, you know the drill. And it's now we're having to, it's with the, from COVID, everyone went online and it never quit. So do we go online to buy tires? How do you do that? I don't know how to do that. Well, let us walk you through that, right? I'm not an aficionado. I'm not a car aficionado, so I don't know that. But here are the steps. It's very inviting and welcoming. And there's a real big push for that. And I think that that's going to be an easier way. So for the car aficionado, you know how to do it, right? You're set. But for someone like me, and I will use myself as an example, I don't know. How thick does a tread need to be? When is my tire need to be changed, or what's a better track for snow versus? I don't know that, but I'm going to go to my trusted expert online, and they're going to walk me through it. And I think not just online, but either on my iPad, my phone. It's a very simple process, but then I have to be ready for that in the store. How is the store changing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love.
to add to that, I mean,
Yeah, please.
with AI, there's so much data out there, and really what you need to understand is how do you make it actionable? You're getting all this information, but how do you design the store? How do you lay out the store? And who trumps who? Because there's so much information, it kind of does get confusing. Even in our stores where I have our app, and a lot of customers don't even realize this, but you can actually locate product via our app. Which is very helpful for some customers, especially you're in a different store and you're like, okay, I'm used to going to aisle 4, but now it's in aisle 10. But how do you educate the customers? We're trying to put signage and graphics and even things on our shopping carts to download the apps, because that will give us useful information. And how do they get signed up to rewards program too? So how do we leverage that data as well?
Yeah, I mean, digital absolutely complementing the business, but also complicating the business. Steve, thoughts from Sprout's perspective?
I mean, I think I would say that we're cautiously optimistic in terms of what it'll bring to the business. I mean, if you think about what Sprouts is, I mean, our three core values are, love being different, care, and own it. And that's very much around people, right? That's the people, the team members that are in the store. It's how we treat our customers. It's really embedded in who we are. So you mentioned the leadership team. The leadership team would say, what's the benefit to the customer first and foremost, and what's the benefit to the team member? And if they can't find it there, it's like, we're not going to do it just for the sake of doing it. That said, we put a task force in place to say, how can we start to look at this? And within the world of store development, I use the example on the reinvestment back into the fleet, gathering all that information, right? For the first time, we actually know by store the age of every single piece of equipment that went in, and we understand their useful life, and sort of how do we use machine learning to continue to make us smarter as we make decisions, as we make the investment in year 1 of 5. How do we pivot? How do we understand and the use of technology to help us get out in front of that a bit more?
And I think that's the key, to be proactive instead of reactive. If you have that data that you can react to, that's fantastic. Because then you don't have the major breakdowns. You don't have stores without HVAC or those types of things. So.
Fantastic. I'm just realizing our timer is not working, but if my watch is on the clock, I think we're still doing good on time, about 15 minutes. If we shift gears and we talk about your internal teams and kind of the people and leaders of the future, how might that be changing in terms of the leaders that you're looking for today versus, say, leaders from a decade ago? Who are you looking to bring into your organizations? Who is really carrying the torch high? And you've seen people have good success. I think there's a lot of retailers in the room. Some have been in their seats a long time. Some are rather new. And so I think it's always helpful to have your perspective on, hey, who are you looking for really to kind of lead the next 10 years for the organization?
It's a great question. I think when you're interviewing or looking at candidates, it's the passion. Do they resonate with the brand? I think as well. Those are some key factors. When you look at individuals, you look at the resume, but really, does that tell the whole story about that person? So we do spend a lot of time during our interview process to really understand the candidates, and are they going to be a well-rounded person? What I mean by that is not just stay in their silos. With my team, I'm always like, we have to talk to operations, we have to talk to LP, we have to talk to everybody. And you really want somebody to kind of take that ownership and say, how does this impact other areas of the organization? Because you don't want something that's going to roll out that somebody in an important department needs to know about. So that's kind of where I'm looking at.
Yeah, I would echo the same thing. Again, our culture is about our people, and you have to have that care for people, because we're building it not just for our customers but for our employees. So that first and foremost, but also, and it's probably a cliche, but there has to be a vibe. Like, there's got to be chemistry with the other team members, and because what we do is not, a single sport, it's a team sport. And like you said, we have other teams that we have to collaborate with, and you have to be willing to understand how to collaborate, understand how to be diplomatic at times when, because operations is always helpful. But I think that we need to be able to get the people and the diverse group of thinkers that don't always think the same way. They get it done differently than somebody else, but they get the same result. But I also want our outside partners the same way. It's the same kind of vetting process with our outside partners, whether it's Apex or, Change Up or whoever else it is, or Gensler. We are wanting someone who brings something to our team, and think differently.
I love this topic. So you hit a nerve on me. So, if I think about sort of what I used to look for in leaders, right? That's results oriented and accountable and all those things. Those are prerequisites.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think the leader for the future really needs to, I think about, like I said, for Sprouts, love being different is a core value, and it sounds a little strange, but it's okay to bring a diversity of experience and a diversity of thought, and to have challenging conversations in a respectful way. And I think it can be very, very powerful. The other thing is, that I really sort of test for anytime I'm interviewing somebody now is dealing with ambiguity, right? We talked about that topic today, right? So whether it's external pressures, internal pressures, making sure that you've got a leader that's not going to crack, right? Like here's my book and this is the way that we do it, as opposed to like, you know what, we're going to have to veer off course and we're going to have to figure out a way to sort of come back to the level set. And so I really think that, you know, dealing with ambiguity, change agents, right? People who aren't afraid to sort of push the envelope a little bit, right? Because retail is retail. We've been talking about it in this room for decades, right? It changes all the time, right? So, and we were talking about some of the other pressures, like we still talk about like when COVID hit, right? It was like this big event, right? And there was this big shift and brick and mortar is dead and we're going to board up all these buildings. And well, here we are. And you can't build them fast enough. I can't build them fast enough. Wayne's changing them up all the time. Like, right? We've got to make sure that we've got leaders who are up for that challenge in a big way.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. So if we think about all of the people in the room on the vendor side and all the resources that you have at your fingertips, what are you really looking to get out of retail spaces this week? Anything particular, any sites that you're looking to gain from your partnership community?
Well, I think is exactly what you said is the partnership. It's not as transactional as I guess it was. Well, it's never been transactional for me and just how I do business, but it's not about selling a fixture, selling a thing, a service. It's what is that relationship? If you're in the room with me, like how are you going to help me and Discount Tire get our team's goals to the finish line? What is that? It's not just about that one per PO or two or three. It's I'm in it for the long haul, 5, 10, 15 years. How are you going to help us grow? And that helps you grow. So it's mutually beneficial. And I understand that. I want to be able to say, this is my partner. He's been with me for 5, 6 years, and he's always hit it on the head, always nailed it, always been top in class customer service. And that's what I kind of want to be able to not just, gain from this, but also give to say, look, and again, hold me accountable. Am I going to, if partnership is two ways, right? So I'm okay with saying, hey, I'm not the smartest person in the room. Tell me how I can be a better partner to you.
April, how do you lead that charge internally? I think from the vendor and partnership side, we see that pendulum swing between the business really driving decision making and sometimes swinging back where maybe procurement and sourcing has a very strong arm in the conversation. How do you handle that conversation internally to ensure that you kind of get the best value result and you're not just driving for low cost?
I think it's.
That's not an easy question, by the way.
No, it's not, because we're dealing with it right now. Is how do you say, well, I'm paying 5% more, but I know that I'm going to get better service, better delivery, better relationships, and I can open more stores. Which means if I can open at least 2 to 3 more stores, what's that revenue income versus that 5%? And I can explain to executive leadership that 5% increase is actually going to gain us so much in revenue. If I can figure that out, and that's my job to figure that out, but I need your help in doing that. I need your help in saying, okay, help me, help Wayne, help Steve get that approval. How can we do that? Knowing that it's going to be a relationship like that. And it is tough. It's a lot of negotiating. It's a lot of troubleshooting back and forth. But, I think that's what we're put up here to do. That's our job to do that and figure that out.
Love it. Wayne, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it. I mean, relationships, it's all about that. Even when we go out for RFP, we're all looking at cost, but we also look at it from how much is your freight going to be? Where are your warehouses at? Because we have stores all over the country. Is it more strategic for us to have 3 different vendors, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest? But we also have to look at our future and say, okay, where are we focused at? What stores are we going to open? And the relationship is key because we don't have all the answers. You know what's going on in the marketplace. Your companies and vendors are understanding what's the new trend, what's the new thing that's happening. We're seeing a lot of changes in the wine business, and how do we adapt to that? What is it going to be in the next 5 years? And that's why when we look at our triple R's, I call it what I like to rephrase as a demographic shift. So that's why we touch our stores every 5 years. Just think about your buying habits. Every 5 to 7 years, your buying habits change. So you got to adapt. And how do we build that partnership and relationship? And I love how you said it's not for the short term, it's for the long term, because we're going to learn together. And that's what we're trying to do.
Steve, what are you thinking about here at Retail Spaces? What are you looking to get out of it?
You know, I think retail spaces continues to be an amazing format, right? It's small enough and intimate enough for me to really sort of leverage conversations with peers, right? Like what are you experiencing? Is it just me or is it all of us, right? And you know, none of us have the special sauce, but I think we can continue to learn from each other on the peer side. And then in terms of the strategic partnership perspective, there's lots of great partners that are here. You saw them all up on the screen. I mean, you know, from the fall of last year, you know, I didn't know a company like Pulley existed out there with technology to try to tap, you know, on the permitting side. It's like we walked out of there and within 5 days, I'm like, here's a dozen stores, have at it kind of thing. We don't know if it's going to work out, but like you can bridge sort of new partners, new technologies that are out there to help us try to skin this cat a little differently. So I think everybody's really got to take advantage of their time here. It's precious. It's hard to get time, quite frankly, out of the office. It's easier just to stay in the office, but this format's a great venue to really kind of join up forces.
Yeah, partnerships. I feel like are the theme of the conversation. So, no, I think we all love hearing that, right? Because nobody, you know, we prefer to work with clients that value that relationship and that partnership. So I think that's music to a lot of people's ears. If we jump into kind of our final topic, a bold prediction from each of you of what do you see happening in retail development over the next couple of years from your personal perspective?
You're going to get us to predict in this economy?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's, if we've learned anything from, I was saying this before, if we've learned anything from 9/11, 2008 crash, COVID, any other calamity that's hit us, is you have to be ready for the unexpected and be agile enough to pivot, to bulk buy, to consolidate, to do more of a refresh or those types of things. And from a prediction standpoint, I think that's the biggest thing is you have to be able to be agile enough. And I think be so set in your ways and so set in what your plan is that you can't rip a page out of that book and go, that's not working. We got to figure this out. But I do think that, you know, I think footprints are going to get smaller just from a digital standpoint. And I think sites are going to get smaller. You know, I think that's the best prediction that I can get. Now, don't take that to the bank. But
I think it's pretty simple. We have to continue to be ready to meet the customer where they want to be met, however they want to be met. And right, whatever that starts to look like, whether it's big footprints, small footprints, no footprints at all, the customer like has become really agnostic, right? Like they own the relationship, right? And so whatever that starts to look like, whether it's in-store pickup, whether it's order online, pick up in store, have install, whether it's you know, experiential, and someone wants to come into a 23,000 square foot box and spend 2 hours talking to every team member and exploring every product on the shelf. However they want to be met, we have to be ready for that challenge.
I think you both hit it on the head in regards to kind of adaptability. You know, we have to be flexible and nimble for our customer. That's the end of the day, right? They ring our registers, they help us out. But what is that future? It's going to be tough. It's going to be a challenging couple of years, I believe, you know, with costs, tariffs, we all talked about that, but the future is bright with us. And I think we're going to be opening more stores, which is good. But it's going to be a challenging year.
Is there going to be more innovation in non-alcoholic wine, or?
Yeah, actually, we're growing
What's
that category substantially. We had a reset not too long ago, and we're actually growing that even more. And THC is now also another product that we've been introducing to our stores as well as things get approved. So
and the tasting is right after this, right?
yeah, there you go.
Beautiful, beautiful. So big focus on client experience, big focus on operational flexibility. It's not easy to set up here, so thank you all so much for your time, for your commitment to doing this. I think, do we have about 5 minutes left? Yes. Maybe we open it up to the audience now for any questions. Don't be shy.
Did he tell us there was going to be a Q&A?
Did he?
I don't think we signed up for it.
Mike.
Hi, Lee.
Microphone.
Really?
What if I could rap really well? Wouldn't that be great? So each one of you guys touched on this a little bit, but you have to ask the question, like, what input do associates give, or how do they impact the way you design a store right now?
Like in-store associates? Is that what you mean? We take our operational feedback very, we build the house, they live in it. And so we have to say, what tweak do we need? Or, hey, this is always happening, this is always needed. So we take that feedback, and we've gone on a quarterly cadence of, all right, let's get the feedback from operations or facilities, any of our techs, our field techs. And we really say, hey, if there's this, we've got this drain pipe that's always an issue in South Florida. All right, well, maybe we need to have a kit of parts in our prototype set that really addresses that. So when the local architect has a Florida set, they know that this drain pipe or this parapet detail is just for South Florida. We really listen to that because, again, we don't want to design or build in a vacuum. We really want to understand, operational flow from equipment, any sort of facilities or upkeep. What is the customer saying about how they approach the POS station? Like what is the best way to, again, continually to improve that building to make that continuing customer service journey the best it can be. So yeah, we take that really seriously.
Yeah, we do as well. It's kind of twofold. For kind of the repair and maintenance side, we reach out to our RVPs, regional vice presidents, every month, and we actually go through their top tickets and address issues with the stores. Even as we touch a store, we have multiple kickoff calls and meetings with the store manager, the district manager, or regional vice president. We actually go through the plan in detail to understand, hey, what's happening in the marketplace? Because that store manager knows that store better than anybody. You can look at all the data, but they know the customer. They're talking to the customer. And I think that's key what we do as a company.
Let's give it up for the panelists, guys. This was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.